In this video, as part of my cross versus gravel project, we're going to be talking about long ride comfort. And this gets into the heart of what I look for in a gravel bike. Now, I know the cross bike is fast in a cyclocross race, but how is it on long rides? So I did several weekends in a row on the gravel bike of rides between 50 and 65 miles. Then last weekend, I repeated one of the routes and I did a 50-mile ride on the cyclocross bike. So the first hour on that ride on the cross bike, I actually felt really good. In fact, after an hour, I thought to myself, I can easily get away with just a cross bike on these long rides. I've done it for a year or two, and I felt really good. The bike feels so solid on the climbs. When you get up out of the saddle on a climb and push hard, it just accelerates well, it feels snappy, and the comfort was okay after an hour. But as I got into an hour and a half, 2 hours into the ride, I felt the bumps starting to get to me. The bumps just feel harsher on the cross bike. It feels like on the gravel bike, those same bumps are more muted, whereas on the cross bike, it feels like the jarring, the harsh bumps, even those small little bumps, it just starts to get to you as a rider, and I started to feel more fatigued on the cyclocross bike. And then at the end of the ride, which again was 50 miles, it took about 2 hours and 45 minutes, I felt like my arms, my neck, and especially my back were noticeably more fatigued on the cross bike than they were on the gravel bike. And again, this is the same route, one of the routes that I did on the gravel bike. I honestly felt more fatigued at the end of 50 miles on the cross bike than I did at the end of 65 miles on the gravel bike. So over the course of a long gravel ride, you encounter thousands, if not tens of thousands, of little bumps during the entire ride. The gravel bike just does a better job of minimizing those bumps, absorbing those little bumps throughout the ride. Now, on the flatter terrain that I typically ride, I never feel like the cyclocross bike is too twitchy. I mean, it is a steeper head angle. It is a bike that handles quicker, but I never feel like that bike is too twitchy. Now, if you're doing a fast descent, 35, 40 miles an hour, you're gonna notice that bike feeling twitchy. But at the cruising speeds, between 18 to 25 miles an hour, the cross bike actually feels fine as far as handling. However, I can't help but think that the more stable geometry of the gravel bike requires less small muscle movements and control, that I think over the course of a long ride, that too is going to help you feel less fatigued. Now, when I went into this project, I kind of had the premonition that there would be a difference between the cross and the gravel bike, but I didn't think it would be as dramatic as it's turning out to be. In fact, I didn't think that I would end up concluding that I needed both bikes. Because like I've said in some of my other videos, I did sell my gravel bike a few years ago and just went to the cross bike. However, this carbon RLT9 RDO is proving to be a phenomenal bike at making the ride more comfortable. And I really noticed that when I did the wheel swap. I thought when I did the wheel swap, which was my last video in this project, that the wheels would make a pretty dramatic difference in improving the comfort of the cyclocross bike. If you watch that video, it did make the ride a little bit more comfortable, but not near as much as I thought. So it's really the frame, the seat post, the wheels, they all work together to make that gravel bike a more comfortable ride, especially on the longer rides. So what I'm really noticing in this is the longer your ride, the rougher the terrain, or the faster you go on gravel roads, the more advantage you're going to find in a gravel bike. Now, if your rides on gravel roads are an hour to 2 hours long and you're not hitting fast speeds, you can easily get away with a cyclocross bike. It's when you start to get into that 3, 4, 5 hours or more, that's when the gravel bike really comes into its element. And like I said, if you're going fast, or if you're riding in the mountains and you're hitting some pretty fast speeds, you're probably going to want that extra stability of gravel bikes because they have slacker head angles. A lot of them have longer chain stays, so it just makes for a ride that's more confidence inspiring when you're hitting those really fast speeds. So what I'm concluding through all of these tests for me personally is my cyclocross bike is going to be used for rides 2 hours or less. Anything longer than that, I'm going to grab the gravel bike. In fact, even my shorter rides, that gravel bike is such a pleasure to ride that I'll probably be choosing that for the majority of my gravel rides. Now, I'll use my cyclocross bike for doing intervals, so I have a power meter on my cross bike. It doesn't fit on my gravel bike, just the type of crank that I have. So that cross bike is nice for doing intervals, especially for cross racing, because I'm in the exact same position doing an interval that I would be for a cyclocross race. I'll also use my cyclocross bike for riding trails. Even though the gravel bike, I concluded, felt a little bit better on the trails, the cyclocross bike I'm going to keep the knobby tires on, so it's going to have better grip. And it has carbon rims. It's easy to ding a rim on a trail because of the roots, and those Stan's Grail rims that I have on this gravel bike are not the hardest rims. They can ding pretty easily. I've noticed that before. Carbon rims, you're not going to ding those things. I mean, if you hit it hard enough, you may break it, but that's going to be a hard hit. So those are the reasons I'm probably going to be using the cross bike for riding single track. So I'm coming near the end of this project, and I'll make a wrap-up video and give my final conclusions. And in that video, I'll even mention which bike would I choose if I only had to pick one. That's going to be interesting. I do have a gravel event planned for next weekend, weather permitting. It's going to be a group event, so I want to use the gravel bike in a group event before I give my final thoughts and final wrap-up. So really the final conclusion for this video in talking about ride comfort over long rides, there absolutely is a noticeable difference in the gravel bike. Now, I know not all gravel bikes are created equal. I've only ridden a handful of gravel bikes. I want in the future, after I wrap up this project, I want to start comparing some other gravel bikes, and I may work with some other people and try to get my hands on some other gravel type bikes to do a comparison with the RLT9 to see, you know, are they as comfortable. But just from judging from the RLT9 RDO, it is a bike that is not hype. It is a bike that does so well on long gravel rides. I would grab that one 10 times out of 10 compared to a cyclocross bike for a really long ride. Again, 3, 4, 5 hours or more. In fact, I have some events that I'm going to be training for this summer, and I'm going to be putting in some long rides, probably up to 100 to 120 miles. And so that's where that gravel bike is really going to shine. So like I said, I'll be wrapping up this project in the next few weeks. Stay tuned to my channel for my final thoughts on cross versus gravel. As always, questions or comments that you have, drop them below. Thanks for watching.